podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello dear listeners, welcome to Achtung Millwall. My name is Nick Hart. You are listening to our voicemail review show for yesterday's mundane 1-0 win. Mundane for me, I don't know how it was for you dear listeners. We're going to find out how it was for our voicemail correspondents, but I thought it was a fairly, we made heavy weather of a win over a fairly poor Plymouth Argyle side. Now I know that you can only beat the team that turns out in front of you, but we just seem to get ourselves in deeper and deeper mud as the game wore along, and the lead that we took through Starboy, as the club official email has called him, Romain Essay, 13th minute goal of course, but that slender lead got ever more slender, as slender as Twiggy back in the height of her modelling days by the end of the game, I felt, and we went close to giving away another sloppy goal at the end. Now I don't want to be Mr. Negativity, so I'm going to hope that we're going to get some counterbalancing views on tonight's show, but certainly for me, win is a win, and 3 points takes us up the table. All good stuff, but I'm not convinced at the moment by the way we're playing. I don't know if we're just running out of steam generally, or whether there's a it's this ever-present thing of the lack of resources. We played last night with Mihailo Ivanovic up front as the sole striker, replaced late in the game by Macaulay Langstaff. Neil Harris, speaking after the game, referred to the clamour, the demand online, shows like this, I suppose, and others calling for 4-4-2. His counterpoint to that, dear listeners, was that we don't have the attacking resources on the bench to maintain 4-4-2. So he did hint he would like to move towards it, perhaps in time, once we get one or two bodies back from Bobby Backache's butcher shop. We'll see. So yeah, anyway, 1-0 win, much needed. Much relieved for everyone that was in the stadium last night. I bet much relieved around the world. Let's find out what our first correspondent today, Matt Richards, made of last night's win. Let's have a listen to Matt to start us off.
Hi Nick, Matt Richards. Just giving some thoughts on last night's game. So important, vital win. I know people were criticising the performance, and Harris even he said it's not the best performance, but quite frankly, didn't care really. Number one was we had to get 3 points. I thought Plymouth, they're really dangerous at the start. That penalty, Christ, I couldn't believe that. First of all, when it was given, and then second of all, when it was cancelled away. Thank God for that. I don't think that wouldn't have helped us at all. But we didn't create much, as we know. SA. Brilliant goal. It just shows you what he's been doing this season. That's been a massive difference, isn't it? He's chasing back, he's challenging, good challenges as well. He's not giving away silly fouls, and that was a great tackle and brilliant pullback by Honeyman as well, who I thought was just superb. I just thought yesterday he was you could see him like pointing, good mentor for Ivanovic up front. He just doesn't stop running. I know he's not the fastest, but he's there. He's like an little annoying little fly just buzzing around the pitch, just getting on everybody's nerves, from a pressing perspective for their defence. So I thought, he's definitely jumping ahead, but I think he's definitely my man of the match. But a great pullback and, really good goal. Shame we couldn't capitalise on that. But they didn't do anything today. Plymouth, especially second half. They had that header, didn't they? They had the header which they should have scored. Straight at Jensen, who still even... he was all right in the first half, I thought. He came for a couple of crosses, but his crosses, he's definitely an Achilles heel. I mean, right at the end of the game, I've seen it on the replay, and it just bounced off his chest. It is a real concern. I think if he's got one more major rick which causes a goal, then Roberts has got to come in for a chance. I thought rest of the team did okay. Ivanovic struggled to get into the game in the first half. He puts himself about. Shame he didn't get any chances, but there weren't chances created for anybody. Aziz is the talking point, isn't it? I thought he did okay. You know, I think you can tell he seems a bit nervous, but he made some good touches, some good flicks, a couple of decent crosses. I think we've got to be patient with him. It's funny as a group of fans, suddenly we have patience with some players and some we don't. We seem to have a lot of patience with Langstaff, who's and nothing wrong with that. I think he's a good trier. We've only scored one goal this year, yet everyone's got given the benefit of doubt. Whereas Aziz, he's like, if he hasn't beaten 3 people and buried it, he's like, oh, he's a pile of shit. And I think I thought it was a lot better performance anyway. Still, I'm not saying he's going to be a great player at all. Far from it. I still have some doubts, but I thought he did. I thought he did okay. Obviously, he had that miss, and I've looked back at honestly, I don't think. I mean, I couldn't believe how he missed it last night, but actually, it was a decent save by the keeper, and it was a really good block on the line. He still needs to score. Obviously, any player through like that needs to score, but it wasn't an absolute cock up. So yeah, it's give him a bit of a chance. Whether we'll be back in the side Saturday, I don't know. I guess if Watmore had some personal issues, so I think Watmore will probably be back in the side if it Saturday, which is okay. It'd be interesting to see if he plays Ivanovic up front or Langstaff. I've got a feeling he'll go for Langstaff. We'll see, because I think Ivanovic will be more impactful coming off the bench, and that's what we're lacking. Substitutions last night were more preservation than anything else, which is a bit frustrating. I would like to see an Idemo. It's Idemo coming off the bench last night for just for 15 minutes. I know he doesn't seem to be flavour of the month for whatever reason with Harris, but he's got pace and he's got presence, physicality, and I think that would have been pretty good, apart from sticking on, Wintle and Kelly just to shore up at the end of the game. But anyway, that's by the by. I don't want Idemo to be frozen out, but yeah, 3 points. That's all that mattered. That's 4 points from 2 home games. And there's nothing to stop us getting something from Swansea, that would be really, really positive. And then we've got a big crowd, haven't we? We've got a big crowd against Burnley and a big crowd against Leeds. And we know what our crowd can do to Millwall at Den with a Neil Harris side. So, yeah, feeling positive, Nick. Let's carry on picking up points. Up to 13th. Blimey. Come on, you Lions.
Yes, 13th, Matt, after that win yesterday, dear listeners. We'll be getting nosebleeds through altitude, pressure changes and all the rest of it, won't we? We started out last night, 1 point above the bottom 3. At one point, the night before, I was looking at the league table and we were actually in the bottom 3. I think Coventry were winning at Queen's Park Rangers, so that would put us into the bottom 3, which wasn't a pleasant experience. But anyway, yesterday's win, you're right, Matt, all that mattered yesterday, and as I pulled up parking in Bermondsey yesterday, I was thinking to myself, well, all we really want tonight is a win by any means necessary, that the performance comes in second to the result, and that's what we got. So I am rather conscious that I've sounded a bit moany, picking holes in what was an okay performance. I don't think it was much more than okay last night. Plymouth weren't all that. They did have some chances. You've mentioned the opening minute penalty shout. I've watched that on the highlights reel, dear listeners, and I think we dodged a bullet there, because I don't know that the bloke was offside. I think it might have, the commentary I listened to, that it might have come off of Casper De Noor, so hence not offside. I think Wayne Rooney made that point after the game. Now I know he's going to be a biased individual, but I think we did dodge a bullet there. That would have been a real punch in the gut, first minute penalty. And then they did have that chance where the striker, the 9, headed from close range straight at Lucas Jensen, who took it. And again, if that ball had been slightly angled either side of him, we would have been in trouble. So, there are areas for concern defensively, I think, and yet Neil Harris will counter that. I think he said this in his post-match that we've only conceded 5 goals in X number of games. I think it was 9 games, but I have to count them up. That's a good point. So, I don't know. You're judged at the bottom line, which is the scoreline in the end. And, last night's scoreline was a 0. So no matter how slapstick the last few seconds of the game looked, and it did look a bit like what was that old joke about Jensen, Dracula not liking crosses or something? Call him Dracula. He doesn't like crosses at all, does he? If only it wasn't part and parcel of the professional goalkeeper's life. He certainly spilled it there. It seemed to come off his chest. I don't think it was under any pressure, and that could have caused mayhem. So I'm a little bit more sceptical of the result last night. Good win, good result. 3 points, but let's not blind ourselves to the fact that there are still some issues. Most notably for me, the communication between Lucas Jensen and his two central defenders, Jeffert Tanganga and Jake Cooper. Now, no one is perfect, but we've got to get that sorted out, because to me, that looks like a most obvious area that other teams will focus on. Anyway, big thank you, Matt Richards. Next up on our list of contributors is Rob Woodford.
Rob Woodford from Block 4, Nick. Look, a scrappy start last night, and we did lack composure in the first half, and Plymouth won the second balls early doors and worked hard at closing down the space and looked more tenacious, to be honest. But I suppose it's no surprise now that it was a moment of class from Romain that gave us a goal, perhaps against the run of play at the time. And then Plymouth should have equalised, but it was such a weak header from the forward that we dodged a bullet there. I was kind of relieved that Obafemi wasn't playing, by the way. We saw evidence of his pace at the end of last season that, could have done some damage against our centre-backs. Romain, well, he works hard defensively now, doesn't he? And not just that, as an attacking threat, all the time we had possession of the football. I'm urging us to give the ball to Romain, because, it's not just what he can do with the ball, but he draws free kicks as well, doesn't it? That, if only we can make a little bit more of those. But listen, we settled down after the goal and started to play some nice stuff with more composure after half time, and kept our shape well and kept things tight. And then the game fizzled out. Good cameo from Wintle, I thought, at the end there, the last quarter of an hour. But look, 3 points is more crucial and more important than the performance. And by the way, is it just me, or is Wayne Rooney now starting to look like Henry VIII? But, give him credit for managing a traditional yo-yo club, because that's not an easy stepping stone to further your career, is it? And talking about yo-yo clubs, if we manage to stay up this season, and it's looking like it's a possibility, this would be our ninth consecutive season at this level, which would equal the previous best between 66 and 74. And that would be an achievement, because nine consecutive seasons in the second tier for a club of our size will be pretty good going. Others don't think so. Others think we should be tearing up the league and winning promotion, but and that's other people's opinions. Yeah. Roll on the weekend. A bit more confident now about getting something from the Swansea game, which is, looking at the league table, it's looking like a mid-table clash, isn't it? But now the goal difference that we have is now we're in a more realistic league position, I think, that reflects perhaps some of the performances this season where we haven't got results. Roll on to Swansea.
Fabulous stuff, Rob. Incidentally, whilst I think of it, listeners, Rob is running a Dockland walk around the old sites, or the origins of Millwall Football Club, at Millwall Rovers, Millwall Athletic, their various spots around the Isle of Dogs. If you live and work in the area, I mean, it's dead easy to get to the island now. DLR from Lewisham, you can get the Jubilee line to Canary Wharf. But it's on March the 22nd. I think that's the international break next year, 2025, March 2025. I did repost Rob's tweet earlier on advertising the event. If you have any interest in the history of the club, it's well worth doing these walks. I understand that Rob is a very, very good raconteur, and that comes across in his messages, and so it'd be of interest to anyone that's interested in the early days and history of our football club on the Isle of Dogs, which has changed obviously, totally out of all recognition from those early days, as indeed has Wayne Rooney. Rob, you're right about the Henry VIII look. He's getting squatter and squatter, and the turkey hair and the beard. Obviously, I don't know if that's turkey inspired, but certainly the toupee look on top of his head is giving him very much a whole Hans Holbein look of Henry VIII. Good mention for Ryan Wintle, actually. It's not a name that often crops up on anyone's lips, and I must admit, it was one of those players where it just seems to be almost like merges into the background, but he actually came in. He's often given difficult late game briefs, isn't he? He's coming in just a few minutes to go to close out situations like last night. So, yeah, nice shout for Rob Wintle there, Rob. The goal was really well taken, wasn't it, from Romain Esse? And I think I made this point in the other show that we've often looked at our best where we've played the kind of intricate passing moves, the triangles down the middle of the pitch, or we've taken the ball at the defence. By no means a traditional Millwall skill. I mean, if you'd said the stereotype of the Lions, it's always been the long ball, crosses, set pieces, blah blah blah. We've been diabolical at set pieces this season, and for some while, really. I think one of the few areas where the loss of Zian Fleming is being felt is the fact we don't seem to have anyone that can deliver a ball that gets past the first defender, which is a bit of an indictment of professional footballers, particularly Joe Bryan. I'm looking at you, because our corners don't seem to generate much in the way of danger, and our dead balls don't seem to do so either. The goal with a kind of a loose ball in midfield. Romain gets his body between the midfielder, or was he defender? I can't remember. He gets in front of him, takes it on. Nice overlap from George Honeyman, who's been mentioned already. Highly industrious player, very, very useful individual to have in a squad. And then, of course, the cross comes back from Honeyman, angled back to Romain, who slots it away with authority. 1-0, and that was enough to separate two fairly mundane sides, in truth. Yet 9 years, I missed that point. That's a very good point you're making there, Rob. 9 years if we survive this season in the Championship. It is quite an achievement, and it has to be said, to have done that with the resources that we have available. We are by no means the biggest financial hitters in a league that often contains clubs relegated from the Premier League with multi millions of pounds to play with. We're always going to be amongst the financial minnows, if not the minnows in other senses of the word, but certainly financially we're going to be amongst the smaller hitters. So to maintain our place and position is a tribute, even to the names that dare not speak their identity, like Gary Rowett, but also very much now, of course, Neil Harris, because between the managers, excluding Joe Edwards, that to be able to maintain a club of our standing at this level is no mean achievement. You're right, dead right there, Rob. Great point, mate. Big thank you there to Rob. We're going to take a short advertising break, and then when we come back, it will be Glyn Horner, followed by Hassan Koulé. So we're back after these messages.
Sports Social, now on the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hi, Ben here from the Fantasy EFL Show. Come and join myself and Jay for all your latest Fantasy EFL updates, where we will be talking through key fixtures each game week, teams and players to watch, and giving our opinion on who should be in your fantasy teams. We'll be joined by some of your favourite Football League faces and fans from teams who we think will be racking up the points that game week. Make sure you follow and listen to the Fantasy EFL Show wherever you get your podcasts, and join us on that Fantasy EFL journey.
Achtung, Millwall.
Hey Nick, Glenn here. First message for this season. I'm a bit late to the game, but what can we say about last night? I think the game against Plymouth the word I would use would be uninspiring, which maybe doesn't really do justice. I mean, it was a win after all, but the performance was weirdly we were bossing the game, but we didn't ever look like scoring more than one goal to me. We I think had some clear, obvious chances, and obviously the misses by Aziz and Leonard would be the ones that stand out in the second half. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think we probably should come away with a win and feel a little bit fortunate that it wasn't a draw. And had it been a draw, I think that would have been really bad news for Harris. Generally speaking, I thought Aziz showed his promise. I mean, he's not going to be the finished article. We know that. He had moments where he looked really good and he was desperately trying to get involved in the game at all times. So I was quite happy with that. I did see him not chase one ball that was rolling out. And I think if he just really sort of just committed himself to it, he might have at least got to the ball or even given the defenders something to think about, so that for the rest of the game, they're thinking, this guy's never going to give up. I better make sure I kick it out next time for a corner or throw in. But generally, I think Aziz is showing promise. And I think Ivanovic, as I messaged you before, I mean, he really reminds me of Sadlier in his early days. I mean, he's clearly not the finished article again, but got great potential. I mean, his touch is absolutely perfect. I think he's a quality player. And if he can live up to that performance, I mean, 19 years old and he looks like a championship player. So he's only going to get better. And I think Premier League is absolutely a realistic goal for him. So it's nice, I think, to see that the club's strategy of bringing in young talent with a view to selling on at a profit is working. And I know that might not meet Neil Harris's short-term targets, but I think in the long term for the club, if we're going to become a club that nurtures talent and sells on, and that's how we survive financially, then we're going to need a conveyor belt of this type of talent coming through. So I'm actually quite encouraged by what we're doing as a club, and I think that's the way to be going. Final thought, and slightly negative, but I as someone who used to play in goal, I watch goalkeepers quite closely, and I really appreciate good goalkeeping. We need to talk about Lucas. It's a strange one. He's got attributes. He's definitely, he has moments in a game where he pulls off good saves. He appears to sort of be, good reactions and able to command his box. And then suddenly he'll just jump up and put two hands on the ball and drop it in front of their striker. And he was really lucky when that happened. He was really lucky. If that had gone in, I think that would have been curtains for him for the rest of this year. Then at the end, again, another high cross ball. He comes out and somehow it smacks him in the chest. And I'm genuinely starting to wonder whether the guy has an eyesight issue. He seems to fail to recognise the flight and pace of the ball in the air. And that suggests to me that maybe he's not seeing it clearly, because he was there, he was in position, he had two hands available, and he wasn't really particularly being challenged. I didn't see on the replays that I saw any noticeable deflection off any of the other players. And I noticed that, when he... when the ball was cleared, he started shouting at his defenders. But I'm sorry, you're a championship goalkeeper. The ball comes in, hits you in the chest. You should be catching that ball. You should be holding on to it, and you should be killing the game out there and then. So I don't know what to say about him. I'm definitely not convinced. And I think he's got potential, but I'm just not sure he's going to reach that potential. Having said that, Sarkic was a bit like that when he first came in, and he turned out to be quite a good player. So, God rest him. Maybe Lucas will develop in time, but I'm starting to wonder if we need to think about... he could have cost us a couple of points last night, and I'm not sure we can afford to drop a couple of points at the moment. Maybe it's time for Roberts to come in. Anyway, that's it. Generally speaking, it's 3 points in the bag, so that's good. And let's hope we can just keep the good fortune and the points coming in. All the best. Speak soon. Cheers.
Hello Nick, Hassan here. Just leaving a voice note after tonight's victory against Wayne Rooney's Plymouth Argyle. Can't say Plymouth Argyle anymore. It's got to be Wayne Rooney Plymouth Argyle. Well, it's 3 points. We were looking to win tonight. And I have to say, this season we've probably played better and not won the match. As for tonight, we didn't play to our strengths. We didn't play very well, but we won. So, as I said, this season we really played well in games and not got the result. Tonight we didn't play as well and got the result. So I'm happy on the way home. As I said, it's 3 points. It's a win at home, and as crazy as this league is, we started off the night, I think, either just a point, I think just above the bottom 3, and we're now 13th. So, again, I always refer to online chatter because, let's face it, that's where most of the small talk is now, as opposed to going out in places and seeing lots of fans and congregating and talking about football. People just they just lose their shit again. Like, just calm down. It's still early days, and you watch tonight, people will be raving, "Oh, great result," and we're going at the top of the league. But again, it's a work in progress. As for the game itself, I take my hat off to Plymouth, especially their away support. It's a long bloody way to go, Plymouth to London on a fucking Wednesday night, and they were in good voice. I actually thought they done everything right except it's the final ball. They done everything right. We put the ball in the back of the net. We coped with them well. I'm thinking about it. Jensen, he didn't really make a lot of meaningful saves, which is probably testament to our defence that we restricted them. But they had a lot of ball, and their fullbacks got forward very well. I like their number 10. I think his name was Whitaker, who scored a good lot of goals last season. He looked quite dangerous, and we done well. It was a tricky test. As for the players, I say Jensen, a couple of hairy moments at crosses, but otherwise solid. Another clean sheet for him, which will do his confidence good. I thought Cooper and Tanganga swept everything up. Tanganga had a few hairy moments, but other than that, solid as usual. I thought Joe Bryan did well. Again, he got tested. I think it was by Whitaker and a couple of others, but he stood his ground and he contributed what he could going forward. Lenny, solid as usual. Saville and Denor mopped everything up. Honeyman, he's the Duracell battery that doesn't run out. So it's a good job that he's not a battery, because he won't sell a lot of batteries because he doesn't run out. So he had a good game. I thought he done well to link up with Eze for the goal. Intelligent bit of movement from both of them, especially from Eze. Again, a class above at time. I think in the second half he was trying a bit too much. Lost the ball a couple of times, but that's been really harsh. He's he's just a class above, and he's a great outlet for us. And good to see him get another goal, especially at home as well. That would do his confidence some even more good. Again, that link-up play with Honeyman, the intelligence. Once he squared it off to Honeyman, he didn't go charging in to the box. He stood his ground. Honeyman, hats off to him. He looked up, he squared it back. It's simple football, and I suppose that's what every manager strives for these days, is passing it into the back of the net, and that's what they did. And it was enough to win the game. Game management, I think they call it. Who else was out there? Ivanovic, to be honest with you, he was quite starved of service tonight. He didn't do anything wrong, but he tried. It was a difficult match, and he's a work in progress, as is Femi Aziz. Probably his best performance in a Millwall shirt. At least tonight, he's made me go away from the match thinking, do you know what? There is a player there. I think there is something there. It needs to be honed. It needs to be harnessed. But he gave me enough to say, do you know what? Give him time. I know I think he shit his pants a bit with that one-on-one. I don't know what he was doing. He lost his foot. He's a little bit clumsy for me. But, compared to the last voice note I left, I think that was against West Brom, where he was just awful. Tonight, he wanted to get involved more. He took players on. He done his best. And he went off, I think, with cramp. He looks a little bit unfit, to be honest with you, Nick. He went down with cramp. But he got a standing ovation. So, I think it's testament. The fans could see that he was trying, and he's trying to say, do you know what? I am good enough to play in this side. And, going back to his experiences with Reading, I know he had a season in League One with them last season, but in the Championship, I'm assuming he played in that Reading team that was awful and they got relegated. So his Championship experience is not there. So hopefully I think more games he plays, he'll start to find his feet and take it from there. But otherwise, yeah, I'm driving home happy. 3 points. It's always good to win ugly. And we move on to the next game. Give a shout out to Bobby T, by the way. Always look forward to his voicemails. Always puts a smile on my face. I hope you're well, Nick. And until next time. Cheers, mate.
Huge thank you to Hassan and before him to Glyn Horner. Yeah, Bobby T's coming up in a little bit, Hassan. Some good points in both of those two messages. I'm trying to condense both, which cover similar grounds in many ways. Aziz, you're right there, Hassan. I thought, and Glyn, I thought Aziz was improved. You know, he wasn't a world-beating player last night, but he was leaps and bounds ahead of what we've seen in his appearances so far as cameos. The cramp intrigued me because I thought the same thing as you, Hassan. That he left the field maybe a touch unfit. I don't know. Certainly pulled up, and he got good applause when he went off, and I think that's testament to the footballing knowledge of a Mill crowd because we get called many names, don't we, over especially over the internet. But we do recognise when a player has shown his best and has put some maximum effort in. And that's what Aziz did last night. And he can't do any more than that. I would like to see him develop his game a little bit. He's got some good mentors at the club to try and work on the areas. Also, at the moment, I suppose, he's in the fortunate position there aren't many other options. Only Yamarku, who I would have liked to have seen last night. I think someone mentioned that earlier on in this show, wanting to see Idemo come back. I quite like him. Idemo clearly is a boy that's got to control his temper, and that's the secret to a professional career, isn't it? I mean, yeah, everyone's got sees a red mist when circumstances dictate, but you've got to control that in a professional environment, and that's what he's got to learn. But I would like to have seen him play last night, possibly as a replacement for Aziz. But Neil Harris went for the percentages of Wintle, who we've mentioned, also Danny Kelly coming in. Both did, solid jobs late to see out a game that we did need that result. I think that was the point that you made, Hassan. I think, Glyn, before that. Uninspiring was your word, Glyn. Yeah, I didn't exactly walk out of the den floating on air, but I was pleased with the win. Ivanovic, I love that comparison with Richard Sadlier you made there, Glyn. Big comparison, listeners. Anyone of a certain age, and I think that's going to be most of the according to statistics of Spotify, that's going to be most of the listenership of this show are going to be people that do remember Richard Sadlier playing for us. We don't really get the kids so much, listeners. We do get the kind of middle, the middle range listenership, shall we say, the 30 pluses. But yeah, that's a great comparison. I think he has a long way to go in terms of development, Ivanovic, but there is the raw materials there to work with. And as we've just said about Aziz, he's in the right place. He's at the right club. I read an interesting article, and I can't remember where I saw it. It wasn't The Athletic. It was something like that. Or one of these online newspaper jobs. They interviewed the bloke who owns Peterborough, D-Mac. What's his name? Dara Mac something. I can't think of his surname. But they've got a policy there where Peterborough almost is a production house of young talent. The average age of the current Peterborough side is something like 21 or 22. It's a very young side, and he makes no secret of the fact that that's the point and purpose of Peterborough Football Club, is to bring in young talent, play the kids, and develop on and sell on. The problem there being that Peterborough as a club, as a fan base, shall we say, is probably at the upper limit of how many people you're going to get in the ground at any given time. There's about 9,000 is their average crowd, so that's the way that he sees that club being sustainable. It's working for them. But the point of the article being that if you set yourself up as a production house of talent and then sell it on, it's going to produce a zigzag of results. You're going to get good days, you're going to get bad days. And to some extent, we're trying to ride two horses at the Den. We clearly have something like that model in mind. The Brentford model would be my choice of comparisons. Not Peterborough, not so much, but Brentford would be a good comparison where you're producing talent and buying in more talent, possibly from abroad, like Ivanovic has shown himself to be. But you're going to have to expect a developmental, issues as you go along. You're often dealing with kids, and often, the tactics might work one day and not look so good another day. So you're going to get erratic performances. That's the price you're going to have to pay. Personally, I like the model, but as at the end of the day, and I think Neil Harris touched on this in his post-match interview, you also want to win football matches. So, there's a balance to be struck between kids and experience. Thank God I'm not the one having to make that. Final point, Glyn, you brought up Lucas Jensen. I've mentioned him a few times. I also, I don't think I'm the only person. I'm sure anyone watching him sees the potential of him. He seems to be a great shot stopper. Reminds me of, Bart Bielkowski in the shot stopping sense, but not so much in the cross fielding sense. That's got to be sorted, because unfortunately for him to lose the plot like he has done a few times this season, he did on Saturday, didn't he, where he was beaten by the fly at the corner for the opening goal versus Derby County. He's been beaten a few times with some odd bod crosses in from the right. There's clearly an issue. That's got to be worked upon. No one wants to see the boys' confidence broken by being dropped, but we can't afford to spill goals and concede points. I think you're right that he dodged the bullet last night, Glyn, because there was a late chance, and I must admit, my ticket can't take the strain, dear listeners, as I'm sure you can appreciate. So yeah, he's got work to do. I think he's not the finished article as a championship level goalkeeper at the moment, because that's a major issue. So that's got to be dealt with and worked upon. Big thank you then to Hassan and to Glyn. Next up on our list of contributors is John Rankin, followed by, after the break, Bobby T, dear listeners. Bobby T after the break. John will take us into the advertising break.
Hi Nick, John Rankin here, just calling in after the 1-0 defeat of Plymouth at the Den, and just want to start the voice note by saying I had a brilliant sort of little interlude before the game. We went to the Millwall Community Trust and I met one of my boyhood heroes, Trevor Lee, and I walked up to him, shook him by the hand and said, I was there and I saw it. And he knew what I was talking about, and obviously so do most of the listeners. 1978, I was in the Coldblow Lane end, aged 13 with my dad, and saw him perform that overhead scissor kick, which everyone talks about. And he was a real gent, He was there signing little kids, T-shirts and things. And the little kids there, probably didn't know who he was. And they were sort of enamoured with him. And it was really, really great to see him. I got a little bit sort of, a little bit of a lump in my throat, actually, seeing him, because he brought back so many memories of the good old days down the old Den. So there you are. On to the game. It's a 1-0 win at home, and they do say that good teams can sit on a 1-goal lead, for a long time. And I suppose that's what we did, but boy, oh boy, we could have really put that team to the sword. They got beat 5-0 by Cardiff in their previous match, and I thought they was going to react. And I thought, well, they have reacted because they got a penalty within the first 30 seconds. But luckily, the linesman overruled it. And Roman Esse went on to score a beautiful goal. He was our most creative player. I think him and George Honeyman were both the best players on the pitch. George Honeyman for his industry and for his link-up play and for his general effort and approach. He can break up the play, he can tackle, and he can also contribute and move the ball forward. Roman Esse as well, his goal came from a turnover which he created. He tackled the man just inside, who was in possession, just inside the Plymouth half, surged forward with the ball, played it through to George Honeyman, who cut it back beautifully, and he slotted it into the corner. And it was the one moment of real quality for the whole match. I've got to say, I don't think our midfield's really working, and I think that's what caused us most of the problems today. You had Jaffet Tanganga and Jake Cooper with the ball in defence. No one showing for the ball in any real purposeful way. The midfielders, and I'm talking about Casper Denore and George Saville, they just did not look hungry for the ball. Casper Denore had a very below par match, and I don't think it was a great performance by George Saville. They didn't really look at it. I didn't see them really pass to each other, and I've alluded to this before in previous voice notes. They just do not seem to work as a team, those two. Individually, they're great players, but we've got to get that midfield engine sorted out, or else we're going to get spanked by some teams really badly, because we just cannot command that centre circle. And I think that's priority number one. In front of them, we've got some real talent. Obviously, Romain Esse, Milaiho Ivanovic. He worked really hard, and there's going to be good things coming from him. Macaulay Langstaff. I think Aziz is a work in progress. I could have scored that second goal, but you've got to give the boy a chance. So there's a lot to be positive about. But boy, oh boy, it was a long, hard struggle, but we came away with the 3 points. And so it's on to Swansea. So all the best. Come on, you Lions.
Achtung, Millwall.
Bobby T. Nico, Achtung, Millwall. Millwall 1, Wayne Rooney 0. And all our fan base and all that, I mean, we're just never happy. Win, lose or draw, we just keep moaning. I don't care. 3 points in the bag. We won ugly. Back to the walls. Romain Esse man of the match. I can't say more than that. Femi Aziz, all right. I take my hat off to you. I gave you a bollocking last game, £1 Waitrose. But today was one of your better games, Femi. You attack. Now play him more. Play him more. That's what I say. Joe Bryan, you had a good game. Aziz, what were you doing? All you had to do is roll the ball in there. But unlucky. That was a shit Plymouth team. Let's not get too carried away now. Yeah, we're mid-table. That was a much-needed win. I'm happy. And so is the Achtung Millwall face. Bye for now. Bobby T here again, but let me just finish off this by saying we won ugly. Back to the walls. Great defence performance. We shut up shop. We've done what we needed to do. Put the ball in the net from our star boy. Hopefully he's all right. But we're going to lose him to Palace, Liverpool. Money talks in this game. But where will we be when we lose him? I don't really care. Well done, Romain Esse. Love ya. Langstaff. Mihailo, you done all right. You done all right. You worked the channels and all that. Kelly, a bit young for me. Tatanga, Cooper, Jensen, he's a bit suspect at crosses. Still, we were flapping at the end and panicking. I don't care. Job done. Millwall 1-0. We needed this. I said Harris out and he's got to walk and all that. But look, let's not get carried away. Swansea now and then the two big boys. Let's see what we've got, Millwall. Bye for now, Bobby T. Nick Hart, Bobby T. I will sign off by saying Harris has got to stop being a little mug and listening to Adam Barrett and all that. We all cried out for 4-4-2 tonight. He didn't do it. He played Mihailo, he put Langstaff on. For me, I don't know why Hanneman does play. Hanneman is a good player, but Aziz now has proved now a bit more run in the games, and I think that's what I'm saying. So I don't know what Harris is doing. Gallen listening to Adam Barrett or Livermore, but today should have been 4-4-2, but he got away with it. Bye for now. Nick, Bobby T here one more time. See, the bottom line is, what I'm trying to say to all of you and the fan club, I'm not saying fans are going to turn on them. Tonight was ugly when we got past it, but I mean, there's no room for 4-4-2. Esse today on the wing, Aziz on the wing, and Esse got taken off injured. He's fine, hopefully. But Hanneman, yeah, we all say workhorse and all that, challenges and all that. But what I'm trying to say, to start chipping and changing and play one up front, whoever he's going to, whoever he's going to, Barrett, Gallen, whoever, to leave one on the bench. And it's good, but I mean, if we do 4-4-2, we put teams away straight away with our play. With Ivanovic needs help up there with Langstaff. So that was the only frustrating point. He wants to do the Harris way, and we just got to do it. But if he gets found out by Swansea away and we lose, and then we lose another two games again, Leeds and Burnley, want to be positive. Against the big teams, we turn up. But yeah, bye for now, Nick. Great podcast. Bobby T's relaxed now at home. Great win, mid-table. But again, only 3 points off the safety. So I'm not getting carried away. But a win's a win. Bye for now.
That's the unique sound of Bobby T. Big thank you, Bob, for that. And before him, to John Rankin before the break. 442, there is actually quite an interesting end piece on the manager's interview, which is on Millwall TV, the one that's behind the paywall, the £5 a month paywall that the club have. But Neil Harris actually gets asked about 442 or some variation thereof, certainly the two striker option, and he does make the point that at the moment, I think he kind of hints he would like to move towards a two striker solution. So Ivanovic and Langstaff, presumably. I don't know how long Bradshaw's out for, but let's just erase him from the conversation. But for as long as there's just at the moment Langstaff and Ivanovic, Neil seems to imply we don't have the backup on the bench to be able to take on a two striker situation. So there's not enough replacements sitting on the bench. So there we are. It may change come January. We may look to reinforce up front. I don't know. Depends on the medical prognosis for the likes of Tom Bradshaw and so on. Also, I think midfield. I mean, it was John that mentioned the midfield not working. I mean, obviously Billy Mitchell. I did see someone somewhere speaking to Billy. Might be on our WhatsApp group. Speaking to Billy in the car park, and he's saying he's getting closer to being able to return. I think he's been a big miss in a way, and I do agree that the midfield last night wasn't very inspiring. Saville and Denor. I like Denor. I like George Saville, but somehow, as I think it was John said, and I agree, it didn't work last night. It hasn't worked for the last few games really. So we do need to freshen that midfield up a little bit. Job done, as Bobby T said. Job done. Moaning fan base, well, that's been so ever since 1972, and back when the Trevor Lee overhead kick took place that John was mentioning earlier on, Bob. You're never going to change that. So there we are. Great stuff from Bobby T. Great stuff from John Rankin. Big thank you to both. Next up, we have our final three messages. I'm going to play them one after the other. I'm going to play Aussie Dave out there in Western Australia, Rob Abbott in Dublin, and Chicago Joe. We're going to go all around the world. It's a bit like the old Lisa Stansfield song, dear listeners, with Achtung Millwall takes you all around the world. So first up is Aussie Dave, then Rob, and Chicago Joe.
Hello, Nick. Aussie Dave here after the Plymouth game. Whew. Open that relief valve. 3 desperately needed points. Yippee! The performance was somewhat Rowett-like. We take the lead, then defend like the Alamo and shove a lot of defenders on. Must have been about 15 at the end. Focusing on some of the players, I think everybody was solid all round except for one player. I want to highlight 3 good performances. Esse, he's a creative spark. Aziz, probably his best game yet, but missed a sitter. And my man of the match, which some probably won't agree with, is our Marmite player, dear old Joe Bryan. I thought he provided some useful outlets on the left and was quite strong in the tackle. The one weak point, and I'm sure other players, other supporters will point out, Jensen still gives me the willies. Do people say that phrase anymore nowadays? And finally, the thing that really got me livid at 5 a.m. in the morning at the end of the game, after about 65, 70 minutes, Esse was clearly buggered and sort of like didn't have his spark. And I was shouting at the telly and trying to wake up the missus, get him off. Anyway, he kept playing to the very end and then went down. And I was absolutely doing my nut. He should have taken him off early and put Imako on, but he doesn't seem to like him. That was strange, wasn't it? Anyway, 3 points and on to sunny Wales. Come on, you Lions.
Morning, Nick. Rob Abbott here. Great feeling waking up with 3 points on the board last night, and a vital 3 points in my opinion. First 10 minutes, well, Plymouth looked dangerous, didn't they? But apart from that, we stifled them out, and defensively were very, very good. One hairy moment right at the end where Lucas in goal dropped the cross, but luckily he managed to regather it. On our side of things, very, very impressive performance by Joe Bryan. I would give him my man of the match. The back four looked composed, and like I said, Plymouth didn't threaten, so good job done there. Femi Aziz, absolute woeful on Saturday. Loads of people on Twitter wondering if he could play football, but he got his start last night and I thought he performed well. Should be scoring though to make that game a lot safer than it was by putting us 2-0 up. But yeah, good start from him, good performance. Good start by the big Serb as well, done quite well. Pretty happy with that. And then, look, our star, Romain, every single game, hey? His value goes up. Fair play to the boy. Hopefully it continues. And onwards and upwards onto Swansea, but a big 3 points. Happy with that. And let's see what happens on Saturday. All the best.
Hello, Joe from Chicago. Hell of a win. I'll take it. SA is class. George Honeyman, when he's off the ball on the wing, somehow in open play can figure things out. Again, George Saville's getting all these free kicks and corner kicks. I don't understand it. Especially the left-footed outswingers. Like, just give them to Joe Bryan. Saville just isn't good at them, and whatever he just sticks it up in the air, Cooper can never get power on it. So it's really just kind of useless considering those outbreaking runs aren't happening after the Cooper header. So it just puts him in a terrible spot to be on the counterattack defending. Anyways, 3 points at home, 3 points at home. Love beating Rooney. Think of it as karma for not giving me a proper answer when I asked him a question in a presser last year when he was still in DC. I'm sure that's what it was. Cheers. 3 points, 3 points, 3 points.
Cheers, Joe. Cheers, Rob. And cheers to Aussie Dave. The Willies, that's a good phrase. I'm going to bring that one back, Dave. Give me the Willies. I agree that Jensen gave me the Willies at that last moment drop. We've touched on it already, so I won't flog the Lucas Jensen point. But yeah, we need to be tight in defence. We're probably not going to score that many goals this season, so we can't afford to concede them. Neil Harris will say to me, if he heard me saying that, he'd pull me up and say we've only conceded 5 in so many games where it did look a bit harum-scarum last night, I've got to say. Big thank you to Joe. Wayne Rooney, yeah, he drew a lot of heat last night, didn't he? I think more from our point of view. I mean, I've never known us cross his path, to be honest. He was always playing at Premier League level and quite a servant for England, to be honest. But anyway, that's no guarantee you will not get abuse down the den when you come there. And he certainly got some last night. Some fantastic ribaldry towards Wayne Rooney last night. Big thank you, Rob, out there in Dublin too. That's the show, dear listeners. I want to say big thank you to every single contributor for this voicemail show. If you want to help contribute to Achtung Millwall, I really appreciate all of the voice notes. They make for a great reaction show like this. I really enjoyed doing it. We've got some real characters, and I really enjoy the fact that each of the different voices and personalities come over so well with their voice notes, and in the context of this show, I just think it's fantastic. So I really appreciate every single person who leaves a voicemail message for me. If you want to leave me a message, dear listeners, do give me a shout on Twitter. If you're on X, you can direct message me. You can actually send a voice message on that. Better still is if we exchange mobile numbers, then you can buzz it to me direct, and that's better still. But that's up to you. It's always excellent to receive notes and messages post game. I'm going to try and do a show at the weekend. I can't go to Swansea. I was going to go down to Swansea. I must be taking leave of my senses, but something's arisen at home, so I can't go down there now on Saturday. I'm going to try and get a sight of the game if I can do. But we'll certainly do a show, hopefully, with a few voice note reactions from the away trip to Swansea. It's a big game. If we can get a point down there, possibly 3, but if certainly a point, suddenly the form starts to look a lot better. So fingers crossed for that trip down to South Wales. Big shout out to everyone that is going down to Swansea. We'll be back at the weekend with the next edition of Achtung Millwall. But for now, from me, Nick Hart, I'm going to say a huge thank you to everyone once again. Thank you for listening, dear listeners. I do appreciate everyone that listens to the show. We'll be back at the weekend in the wake of, not Poseidon, but in the wake of Swansea. So until then, From me, Nick Hart, Arrivederci Millwall. Bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.